So, hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by marketing and communications specialist Solveig Rundquist. How are you doing, Solveig?
I am great. Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Now, Solveig, please take us back to the beginning and give us a little bit of a background on yourself, what you're doing today, but also some of the steps that you've taken in your career so far.
Ooh, back to the beginning. That's a long one. I would say that I am, let's summarize by saying a storyteller by birth and a marketer by accident. It just sort of worked out that way. My name is Solveig, which is a very old-fashioned Swedish name. It's me and a bunch of 85-year-olds here who have that name, but I was actually born and raised in the US. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And when I had to start university and choose a major, I just was clueless. I had no idea what to do. And I ended up choosing communications because my dad said, no matter what else you want to do in life, that will be relevant and that will be useful. And at some point, I realized that storytelling and writing was already something that had shaped my life. Being from the US, university education is very, very expensive. And I had managed to score a bunch of scholarships and financial aid by writing convincing essays and so on. And so I transitioned into journalism. And then I worked as a journalist for a year in Sweden after I moved here. That's a whole other story. And then very quickly, I transitioned into what I call the dark side of journalism, which is content marketing. So writing all of those articles back when native advertising became, the next big thing.
Yep.
The articles that had like such a catchy headline, you just had to click, and then you noticed it was sponsored, and you're like, oh, I fell for it. I wrote those. And I found it was actually thrilling. It was a challenge, and I find it very valuable to help companies shape a message that actually resonates. So for the last decade, I've been working in the Stockholm tech scene, but
Yep.
with a lot of international companies working on the global sphere, everything from social robots to software as a service. Uh, just all sorts of industries. And now I've earned this reputation, I guess, as sort of the B2B Emily in Paris. Another accident. I didn't mean to focus on B2B, but here I am, and I've become known for my colorful methods. Let's put it that way. Both of the way I dress and the way I work. So here we are. That's my personal brand, I guess.
And how have things changed over that time? Because you've taken a sort of a number of years, but also seen a lot of trends, the latest hottest thing which has come and gone. And what have you sort of seen from that process as well? What's still here? What's relevant today? I mean, your dad giving you advice that
Mm.
you should go into communications. This will always be relevant. Is probably good advice, and I think it still holds water today. But what are sort of the main things that you think on the cards and things that we should be looking at now, but also what's coming down the pipe as well?
Right. I mean, if I can be a little bit provocative, I think that from a marketing and a communications perspective, not much is actually new. We tend to come up
Right.
with new buzzwords, but it's all the same stuff. So, what we once called advertising has become marketing, or what we once called native advertising is now a different type of content. And now, content is king, but everything is content. And I mean, there's all different buzzwords. I saw a post just this morning about how growth marketing is no longer in. Now, the title that everyone is hiring for is marketing innovation, but the
Mm.
job titles are quite similar. And similarly, I've been hired to be a marketing strategist or a content marketing specialist or just a storyteller when that phrase was all the rage. So
Yeah.
I think communication is something innate to the human experience, and working with it is something that has always been
Yeah.
around and will continue to be around. But I think the main shifts we see aren't in marketing or communications; they're in the way we work, which obviously you speak a lot about. And
Yeah.
I think it is this shift from maybe traditional job security to career agility and personal fulfillment and continuous learning being more in a focus. Of course, remote and hybrid work is a part of that. And obviously the rise of AI and automation, I think, accelerate all of that.
Mm.
So I think the best careers today are built by those who think like entrepreneurs, whether they work for themselves or for a company. And I think that's the real shift happening, is just the way we work, but not maybe the work itself.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I think it really is, and I think this whole idea of utilizing the technology and actually sort of building up almost like an entrepreneurial mindset. Doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur, you're working in a startup, or you're working in a large organization, or even a, dare I say, push it in the future, even a sort of public sector organization. This kind of entrepreneurial mindset will put you in the right position to be able to succeed.
Absolutely. And I think we see that happening in the public sphere as well. I mean, there are obvious names that I don't want to drop, but I think it all comes down to personal branding and whether you love or hate someone's brand, personal branding and shaping even your brand almost as a company and having that sort of entrepreneur mindset is shaping everything.
Mm. And it's interesting what you say there about the element of the job for life kind of disappearing now, and that individuals have to almost have kind of a portfolio career themselves. They have to sort of think about sort of more of a project base in terms of the work that they're doing, but also thinking about themselves as a brand, but also a project in terms of reskilling and upskilling on an ongoing
Mm.
basis, Solveig.
Yeah, and I don't know personally, maybe it's just because I enjoy it, but I don't know personally if I would say it's something we have to do or
Mm.
something we get to do.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's very much been a choice, and I think it's more about what we prioritize as well. So I've seen this firsthand that I mean, even though my main gig has always been a full-time employee, I still engage with the gig economy, whether
Yeah.
it's consulting, doing freelance work on the side, or running a network I created in Stockholm, or teaching dance classes. I've always built my career and my life in a way that keeps things dynamic. And for
Right.
a lot of us, I think it's actually not necessarily about needing extra income. It's about the variety, the creativity, and making work fit our lives rather than the way around.
Mm.
And that's really a mindset shift. I remember once I was visiting my family over the holidays, and I was in a job interview process, and I was discussing with my father, whether or not I should take this new position. And he was mind blown. He was born in the 40s, and he said he was mind blown that I was even considering something else because he said, "You have a great job." And in my day, like then you were like, "Yes, I'm set. I don't need to move for life. We're good."
Mm.
But for me, I'm very, very driven by continuous learning and personal fulfillment.
Yeah.
And I think that is a generational shift, which I also think is not going to go anywhere.
Mm.
And it's really about growth for me. So
Yeah.
it's I guess in a way skill stacking is also the new job security, as you say, but for me it's less about security and it's more about what is the life that I want to live.
Exactly. Okay, so it's creating the lifestyle and the blend that you need, and put the sort of the projects and the activities as part of that. I think that's something that we see more and more in life. When I speak to people as well, this is something that's more and more valid. The whole idea that the job for life, I don't need to update my CV or get any new skills, is just so out of date, given the fact that the half-life of knowledge is decreasing, that whole
Absolutely.
sectors and what's valuable to the marketplace is constantly evolving and much more quickly than ever before.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good point, and I don't view that as a bad thing. But for
Mm,
some people, it might be. I guess if you prefer to be more comfortable. But I think certainly gone are the days of climbing the corporate ladder at just one company or in one skill set, even as well. I think, as you say, like the way that knowledge itself has changed and our roles have changed. You will have to upskill no matter what you're doing and be agile, whether that's in term of your title or your company or your skills. But I think either way, you have to take ownership of your career like it is your business now. And instead of
yeah.
relying on sort of a set path, we define our own direction in a much more real way.
I think it's a real way. It's also making things and keeping things fresh and interesting as well, in terms of indulging your passions as well as sort of making money to be able to pay the bills. We still got to do that. The future of work will
Unfortunately,
not
yes.
get rid of that.
Yeah.
But also, what I think, and it's you raised this before, but what I hear from people as well is the fact that by indulging passions and interesting elements, they're not just side projects, but they actually work back on themselves, the whole sort of left brain, right brain thing. So you can be working on content, marketing projects, but also you can be teaching dance class or running an organization, as you said. And these actually sort of build on each other. It's kind of the left brain, right brain thing, but it keeps you fresh and keeps you creative. And those are skills I think you can use back into the other areas as well. So I don't see them as being mutually exclusive. Whereas maybe sort of 20 years ago, you say, well, hang on, if you're into content writing, you can't be doing something with dance or something
Mm,
creative. That's a
yeah.
distraction. It's actually the opposite now, it seems.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I've seen firsthand in my life many times how the variety of activities in which I engage has been an asset. A couple of examples come to mind, but like I actually teach a Middle Eastern dance, and
Okay.
I was once working at a social robotics company where we went to GITEX, this massive tech event in Dubai. And they call it like, a tent, but this tent was actually a plaza. Like it was this massive constructed building in the desert with hundreds of exhibitors, all with different types of robotics. And the question was, okay, well, how do we stand out in such a setting? And with my knowledge then of Arabic music, I said, well, what if we designed our social robot, because it had a 3D projected face, to look like the most famous singer of the Middle East ever, and to sing like her. And so, like in this event hall, you just hear this famous song that every Arabic speaker knows. And we did it. And it was amazing because we actually had people, like we had women coming and singing along and filming themselves singing along with this robot to send to their families. So this type of thinking from one sphere of life and bringing it into another, I think is actually a great way of standing out, and that's been an asset in my current role as well. Heading up marketing at a company called Inigio, which is in trade finance,
Yeah.
which is a very traditional industry, to
Very,
put
I
it
would
lightly.
say.
Yes. And I was hired. The CEO has been very clear with the fact that I was hired because I thought about things differently, because it's still a very rigid industry. And they said, we need to do something different. We need to stand out. And I can see already that a lot of the more modern thinking from other software companies and just the Stockholm tech scene in general
Yeah.
um, is considered very fresh there, and it's making an impact. So I think more people should blur the lines, to be
Yeah.
honest.
And do you see sort of people that you know in your kind of space as well who are also sort of thinking along these kind of lines that they want more out of life and careers and maybe don't see things as work-life balance, but more like work-life integration and sort of maximizing all parts of the lifestyle and work style that they choose?
I think yes and no. I think in terms of work-life balance and choosing the life and the working hours that you want, yes, absolutely. I see that everywhere. I think everyone in my sphere is doing that or is trying to do that. Um, but when it comes to blurring the lines and actually using your maybe personal strengths in other areas of your life in a work context as well, to be honest, I wish people would do that more.
Yeah.
And I think that also maybe relates back to this concept of personal branding.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be personal. I mean, you are your biggest competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And I actually wish that people would use more of their personal lives and passions and quirks in a work context.
Mm.
Um, Maybe not in that cliche LinkedIn sense where, 10 things that proposing to my girlfriend taught me about B2B. Maybe not like that, but, in an authentic way.
Yes. Yeah.
And a non-cringe way. I think there's more opportunity.
Yeah, and I think there is space for that as well because, as you say, it's either sort of the you can kind of tell the cringe things, but also what's been sort of kind of almost AI generated. Give me 10
Oh yeah.
top things, and probably even more linked to a personal brand these days is the kind of the authenticity, which is always strong, but it's kind of brought on a new level of resonance these days, Solveig, because of the fact that people want to know about the individual, what they can do, and also a bit what makes them tick as well.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that's with the rise of personal branding and with more and more people doing it. I would say everyone doing it, but I have to realize actually people who are active in this area are still a minority.
Mm,
But I think people striving to do this still get the impression that they have to be a certain way. I work
right.
actively with sales teams and training them to do social selling. And I have a lot of people reach out to me just about a LinkedIn post and say, "What do you think of this caption?" And the first thing I usually say is this how you would say it to a friend?"
Right.
And
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, well, definitely not." to a friend, I would say this, and it becomes much more human.
Yeah.
And I think that is key. Is authenticity has become such a buzzword that we've almost lost its meaning.
Mm,
And I think the key of authenticity is it is you, and you are a human, and you shouldn't be trying to sound like everyone else because you're not everyone else.
yeah.
And that is obviously the issue with AI as well. But I think it's not just AI. I think we are already trying to make ourselves too generic. And if your brand is cookie cutter, then you don't really have much of a brand.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing that I think it's difficult for people to take on board sometimes because they see what is the trend. But then again, if you follow the trend, then that changes very quickly as well. So you can easily get left behind. And if it doesn't feel convincing, if you don't really believe in it yourself, it's going to
Mm,
show through very, very quickly.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also something interesting you touched on there with the following the trends. I've seen more and more marketers talking about how they go to ChatGPT to figure out what not to do
Okay.
because it's trained on example. And so if in your industry you say, well, how should I handle XYZ? Then probably that is what all the competitors are doing. And so you should do
Mm,
the opposite.
yeah.
So I mean there's a balance with staying, relevant, but I think also trying to stand out and realize that following the mainstream is never the way to stand out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, certainly not over the longer term. And when it comes to different work styles as well, Solveig, I mean, we see the rise of the project economy, portfolio careers, and also freelancing as well. What's your thoughts on this? Is this something that's on the rise, or with more troubled times, are people sort of looking more for a full-time 9 to 5 to give them the perceived or real anchor of security in life?
I can answer for myself and for I think my a lot of people in my generation.
Yeah,
I've heard that Gen Z is sort of going a different way here. But I really do think that, freelancing isn't just for creatives anymore, and that it's something that's not going anywhere. And again, I don't think it's necessarily because of job security.
yeah,
Um, but I do think that this idea of having control over a career and an income and time will keep happening. And that if you can get a decent living from doing something you love part-time, but
yeah.
having more time to do something else you love, um, then why wouldn't you do that? So I
Mm,
absolutely think that about like the career of the future isn't about having one employer for 20 years. It is about building this portfolio, as you say, of work with projects, collaborations, expertise that grow with you, whether that's your full-time gig or whether that's something else, whether that's what is actually paying the bills or whether it's a passion on the side.
yeah,
I don't think that's going anywhere. I've heard that Gen Z is trying to look at a job as more just a job and not get much fulfillment for it. But I would
yep,
argue even that then that's the same thing because if you're treating that as just a job, so you can focus more of your time on something you love, you're still moving towards this balancing act of having many projects ongoing to get a kind of fulfillment.
yeah. No, I think it seems to be a trend that more and more people are getting onto because, you only live once, and therefore making the most out of it and suffering at something that you hate day in, day out, whether it's 9 to 5, 5 days a week or longer, seems like a very wrong starting place for fulfillment in
Yeah,
life.
yeah, for sure. And I saw something just the other day about how, this debate about in Europe, at least we have this discussion about like a 4-hour work week. And is
Yeah,
that something which would be sustainable? Meanwhile, in the US, you have some big names coming out and talking about how you should be working 60 hours a week instead of 40, which is a huge
yeah,
culture clash for me. But I think I read something the other day about how economists, when we moved even to like the 5-day work week, assumed that we would be at a 4-hour work week by now. And even like with
Mm,
everything that's happening in AI, why are we working more instead of less? Isn't that the whole point? Is that, if we can
yeah,
do things more efficiently, we should be freeing up more time.
mm,
So I don't think we should have to work 40 hours a week or 50 and definitely not 60
yeah,
for one job that's just making money and not providing value and impact. And the value and impact, I mean that, of course, for the company, but as well for us personally. I think,
mm,
companies don't need roles anymore. They need results. And if you get those results with less resources, then that's perfect. And similarly for us, if I get value from my job or from something else I'm doing, then that's the important thing. And that doesn't have to be something that takes X number of hours. I think we need to structure our careers and our lives around value, and that is not just financial.
Well, 100%, and I think it's that. And I think even slowly, HR departments are catching on to the fact that it's not a role we're hiring for; it's actually for a value that can be created or delivered for the organization. And this kind of slow mindset change, I think, is something that is really positive that we're seeing on the in the general evolution of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personally, I would never go back to a job where I had to be in the office full time, for
Yeah,
instance. But
yeah,
I see this as a backlash that is happening in some places. But I think
mm,
that, hybrid work for me, it isn't just about where people work, it's about how they work.
mm,
And we are not one size fits all. People have different learning styles and people have different working styles. And you won't get the best results from person A in the same way that you would from person B.
yeah.
So I think the companies that will win the talent war are the ones that are treating employees also like customers and offering the flexibility, the autonomy, and the clear sense of purpose, and a chance to like shape your role as well.
Yeah. Well, particularly in this age of the return to office mandates that we're hearing more and more from some smaller, but also particularly the larger organizations, and a lot of people who should know better in terms of actually pushing these things.
They should.
It just pushes down morale and pushes more people towards the door. And usually it's the individuals with the most skills, knowledge, and expertise who are actually being put off by these office presenteers and mandates.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, they know what they can offer, and they know they can offer it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, the organizations that thrive in the future aren't the ones that resist change. They're the ones that embrace it and actively let people build their own future of work as well.
Yeah. And what's your sort of, this is personal, but also looking at the sort of the future of work, the work landscape, Solveig. Where do you think we're heading in this space?
Ooh, that's a broad question. Um, where are we headed?
More
You know,
technology, probably more flexibility, or will we be
yes.
pushed back into our cubicles?
No, that's not going to happen. At least over in Europe. I mean, like now I think that in the US, to be honest, all sorts of things are possible. But I think that's just a hard no for me. I mean, you couldn't get me into a cubicle, and I think that everyone I know who has been enjoying a hybrid situation would say the same. So that's not
Yeah.
happening. I think that personal brands will become more and more important, and being able to tailor your work life, whether that is through a full-time gig or through freelance gigs and fractional roles, will become more and more the norm. Of course, that doesn't scale into every industry. I realize there are roles where you have to be physically present,
Yeah.
but I would certainly hope that more balance and a higher quality life is something that we will move towards in general, because if not, what is the point?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something where sort of like everyone benefits from it. I mean, we talk about sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but for me, one of the things that needs to be included in there, it's not just about sort of race, religion, sex. It's actually about sort of the ability to be able to work when, where, and how you want to deliver the best value to the company or organization. Surely to having this broad flexibility towards that is in everyone's interests.
Yeah, I think so. But I think I mean, I'm having a very hard time not making this political, but I think there are some people who aren't interested in working for everyone's interest. They're only interested in working for their own interest.
Yeah,
So
well.
we'll see. We can't guarantee it moves one way or the other.
We can't, but also all we can do is fight the good fight and lead by example, Solveig. And I think you're doing this 110% in terms of promoting this and actually showing how this works together. So all credit to you, and look forward to following the journey here on out.
Thanks. I look forward to following yours as well, and all of ours, and hope it keeps going the right direction.